facilities. I think it will work out all right. We wanted to come here because, of course, the subject of the talk is the Cleveland limestone mining industry, and this is the right area to come into. We didn't want to drive all the way to Middlesbrough. Simon, I'm sure, is known to all of you, but just a presume he's been involved in industrial archaeology industry in our area for over 30 years, and I think he's getting more intensively involved now than he ever has. Now he's retired from his former job. Anyway, in 2011, as it says up there, Simon and a group of friends started an excavation called discover and uncover the foundations of there's one at the front here, a foundation for an engine house for the Upleatham mines. Little difficulty with the landowners or local authority, this, that, the other. So as a consequence of that, Simon and a group of friends have got together and formed a new society called the Cleveland Mining Heritage Society, correct?
Yes.
And if anyone is interested in that, we check up the Simon towards the end.
Will you see, Chris, if you don't mind?
Check with Simon if you want to join in. And the CIS has got some bits and leaflets out there for people who are not members of the society who want to know more about it. Anyway, I think I've said enough. I think I'll just let Simon have a free rein now.
Thank you, Gerald. Good evening, everybody. Right, first of all, we want to know where we're talking. Now, I'm going to have to keep wandering backwards and forwards here, so because that's where the button is to press. And it works. Splendid. Right. Basically, we're talking about the Upleatham ironstone mines. And a map here is a representation to let you know where the said mines were. At the very top here is the village of New Mask. Here's the village of Upleatham, and down here off the edge is the town of Gisborough, off this way, and the black line shows the extent of the mining that took place from the Upleatham mines between 1851, when the mines first started, and 1923, when these Upleatham ironstone mines finished. Now, that's the area of the workings. It was an extremely extensive mine. It was about the second highest production of ironstone in Cleveland, but it's left some very limited, very small remains. There was an abortive attempt at Tockets here, south of the area, and there are a couple of shafts to be seen here. There's two shafts, including a ventilation chimney to be seen at the bottom. There's another shaft in the woods. There's the remains of another shaft south of the village of Upleatham. But apart from that, the main remains are to the north end of the Upleatham Hills, and that was where all the ironstone was being worked out from this area and heading north in that direction. Now, the north end, we've seen this is the edge of the hills. There is the railway just near the village of Mask. Here was to be built the village of New Mask, and you can see this lengthy railway connecting the two. At the time, this was the Stockton Darlington Railway at the top, and this railway ran down an incline from the mine entrance down to the sidings here. So centrally here became the main whinny. The next one. You may have to. We're looking again in a bit more detail at the north end of the hills above New Mask here, and this is this central area where the standard gauge railway connected the mines with the outside world, and a narrow gauge railway system went across to the west side workings, and then gradually it was extended along these the outcrop of the seam to the east end, and it's this east end area of the mines that is a particular interest in our talk. Now, this was the full extent of the railways and mine connections by about 1860 and didn't change a great deal until about 1912. And as I said, all the mining and all the railway system here finished in 1923. Right, you need to get the correct... Okay, thanks. Right, I think Dennis reckons that this is the best example of the ironstone seam to be seen in the Eston Upleatham areas, and it's at the top of Quarry Lane, and it shows a very weathered and rather disturbed outcrop of the ironstone seam, but it was this ironstone seam that was being worked, so I think it's quite relevant to say, well, that's it. And in the mines at Upleatham, the top of Quarry Lane, you can actually see an outcrop of it. But of course, obviously, most of it has been mined, so there are a few places where it still remains to be seen. Next. Now, the area of the workings along that northern edge, I certainly have led a number of guided walks over the years, and perhaps other people have done so as well. It's a popular area for people walking, looking at the scenery, exercising, walking the dogs or whatever. And there are a number of mining remains hidden away in the woods. And the former railway track is a very well-defined walk. Now, it occurred to me that whilst we could see the obvious signs of mining exploitation at the main winning and a fair amount at the west side, at the east side there wasn't a great deal. And I was particularly interested to find out where there might have been a hauling engine, because obviously with mine workings you've got to draw long lines of wagons loaded with ironstone out of the mine workings, and it was usually done with a steam haulage system with wire ropes. Now, the site of the one at the main winning is known. The west side, that one is generally known and has been covered over. But I was quite kind of intrigued as to where there might be one for the east side winning. So, a few years ago, I penetrated the depth of the jungle at the east end and came across these remains, these brick remains. So on subsequent guided walks, I used to show this to people. We used to go into the woods here, and someone would say, well, this is the remains of the hauling engine. This has been a stationary engine for hauling the wagons out of the mine. Until people came along and looked at this and said, it's all very interesting, why don't we clean it up? And I thought, oh yeah, right, blah, blah, blah. And years went, and but that's the site of this hauling engine, and as you can see, it consists of a low-level foundation with a few more brick foundations in the background. It's all a bit difficult to see. Next, please. But from the other end, it appears to comprise three separate sections of brickwork. They're all at different heights. This one has a significant hole underneath it, which is a bit of a surprise, and it's all together. I know it's been a hauling engine, but I couldn't really work out how it worked or what it did. Next one, please. As you can see, there's a significant gap underneath here, which seems strange. And there's also actually bits of what appear to be concrete, but oh, next. So one fine sunny day last spring, I went up here with my trowel, and I just cleared off the top of one of these remains to see what might be visible beneath it. And lo and behold, it turned up a couple of holding down bolts, and as you can see, it's starting to sort of reveal itself a little bit. Next, please. As the vegetation increased, I dragged away all the dead undergrowth and dead branches and dead bits of tree and so forth. And it's beginning to sort of be more apparent. It becomes more interesting for people to see in the woods. Here's the first section, quite a large brick foundation, a middle section, and then this higher, completely separate bit over there. Before we go further, I'd like to point out this rather hefty branch here, which has come off this tree. Now I mention that because that tree appears to have been struck by lightning and had been significantly damaged, and that was the big branch that had come off it. You'll find out a bit more about that as we go on. Next. Anyway, that's the first bit that I wanted to clear off on my hands and knees with my trowel and my bucket. And intriguingly, it's got a whacking great split across it. And for quite a massive engine bed, to find it broken and fallen down is a bit of a mystery. It seems strange, to say the least. We know this area is remote from the mines, so it hasn't been undermined. A little bit of a mystery. There's a raised up area here, there's a depression in that area. Anyway, I was hoping that it might sort of become clearer as time went on. The other thing is that I once bought a book in a bookshop in Saltburn for the hugely extortionate price of £2.50. And this turned out to be a copy of the transactions of the North of England Institute of Mining Engineers, dated 1866, which has a detailed description of the hauling arrangements at the Upleatham mines at that time. And it says that this affair here at the east end was a steam engine, of course, a twin-cylinder steam engine with a drive to 2 drums and 3 separate egg-ended boilers providing the necessary steam. So I thought, oh, right, this is intriguing. So I assume, well, up that high point up there, that presume is where these egg-ended boilers were. Next, please. Now then, word got around, and there was at least one individual came along and said, oh, are you doing some work? Can I give you a hand? Oh, yeah, all right. So we started. So what had started off as quite a small scale, this little bit of clearance, got a bit further, and the other chappie was there, doing a bit more, and as you can see, exposing a bit more of this broken base. And of course, somebody came along and said, oh, do you mind telling me what you're doing? I'm from the council. And the chap explained what he was doing, and the chap from the council says, oh, this sounds a good idea. What I suggest you do is write to the council and tell them what you're doing, and at the same time, let me have your contact details, and if there's a problem, I'll get back to you. So I wrote off to the council, telling him in great detail what we were doing, and the other chap, he gave his contact details so that they could get back in touch with us. And they didn't. So we kept on working away, and then one or two more started coming along and getting interested in what we were doing. Next, please. And particularly when we found things like this, we started thinking, oh, this is a bit better quality than we were expecting. It's a rather nicely cut tile here, with a nice sort of squared off buff coloured and a red coloured tile. So this is spinning. And word got around. We got quite a number of people passing by, walking the dogs, and used to call in and say, how are you doing, and what are you doing? We're very interested. And by the end of the dig, which finished in November, December last, we'd had 100 people, we reckoned, that come along and said, this is very interesting, what are you doing? And we had young lads with push bikes, we had older generation people, we got an awful lot of interest in what was going on. Next please. We're looking at the site the other way around now. We started off over there in the top, and as you can see, we progressed down towards this back end, just sort of clearing away what was covering the ground. We just sort of kept on going, and significant things were starting to turn up. Next, please. At the same time, there was bits and pieces starting to appear. This is quite a collection of bits of ironmongery. I like to describe it as assorted ironmongery, not a particular great deal of interest. Next, please. And it's very much the sort of ironmongery you would expect to find on a site that had an old steam engine on it. It's like a dog spike. There's another dog spike. There's a holding down rail track, and bits of sort of flexible material. Next, please. Right. So this was the opposite end from where I'd started, and now it began to make sense. Up until now, we've been dealing with a very broken, a very haphazard site. What we've now got is an area of prepared ground. It's been deliberately prepared. It's for heavy duty. Here is the wall of the building. There is a doorway. There's the other wall, and it's curved out. So we look at the corner of the building. This is the outside. Here's the inside. It's been a sort of cobbled surface with a slightly sloping up doorway through there. The fact that this wall has been completely removed suggests the obvious. The place has been, the materials have all been taken for reuse. It hasn't been allowed to decay. It's been deliberately robbed so the bricks can be used elsewhere. This surface is a hard-wearing surface. It's for a guy wandering about wearing clogs or hobnailed boots, and the fact that there was a lot of coal outside suggests it's been where a guy has been bringing in coal and taking out ashes, perhaps. Next, please. At the same time, it also showed that there had been a degree of rather fine tile work in another part of the area. So here's again the outside of the building. There's a join here, and you've got a diamond pattern of tile work. Each one of these about 9 inches square. But that has been set at a different angle. Anyway, more about that later. Next. Now, having uncovered all this, we then began to start things didn't quite make sense. We have a solid bed plate of a foundation. It's been deliberately and very carefully made, very solid brickwork all the way around, very well made. This area is just simply trodden earth. Now, one of the reasons for it being trodden is presumably because this structure in the middle here has been built. So we've got a brick foundation, which is a concrete structure with pieces of timberwork stuck in it. These are original holding down bolts for the machinery that was on here, and there's quite a nice sand-filled pit at that point. But this is certainly a later addition. It's been clapped on top at some later date. Now, judging by the quality of it, it's been very roughly applied, very roughly put on, giving the impression that it's been put in a bit of a haste. And you can see some of the brickwork and the rubble is haphazardly put on it. I suggested, it perhaps started a rumour, that it had been something to do with the Second World War. Whether that's truthful or not, it's certainly some sort of later stage in the development of this structure. Next, please. Now, when you look back at this north end of the site, where more of the tile work started to show through. And the fact that the stones are being deliberately, the brickwork's been deliberately robbed, it suggests that perhaps these tile flooring has been deliberately robbed as well. And of course it's been damaged and but interesting nonetheless. Next, please. Right, we're back to this strange conglomeration that's been slapped on top of the main structure. And here we came with quite a hefty piece of cast iron. Next, please. Now, it's at a corner. This is this big foundation. Here is a corner. There's earth here. This seems to be a pit of some sort. And here is this whacking grade cast iron fixture. Now, it seems to have a pivot point there, so it could go sideways. There's also been another linkage there. And the thing was angled down here. And here there was a timber beam, 14 inches square. So this piece of ironmongery had been fixed into this piece of timber, obviously to withstand quite a bit of tension. But it was the only significant piece of ironmongery in place, apart from a few holding down bolts. So, intriguing. Next, please. Now then, there's the original foundation right along there. You can see that there is, this is where that piece of ironmongery sits here. And you can see we've got the formation of two separate parts. Here's this major foundation at this point, with this rough cobbled area extending to about there. Then beyond there is a much finer floor with these floor tiles. So you've got two sort of separate areas already developing. You've got a rough sort of an area for heavy engineering. You've got a much more finer sort of area, perhaps for the guy operating the machinery that sat on that point. Next one, please. Now, further across, we've come from the first major foundation. We can see the makings of a middle structure, and this is this tallest, this highest foundation, which is undermined at the far end there. And at this end, well, we've still got more of this tiling, and we've also got a tree. This is this tree that had been struck by lightning that was very badly damaged. It was also in the way. Next one. So it had to be carefully removed. Next, please. I would emphasise we weren't deliberately removing trees, only ones that were in the way. Most of the trees that were removed were elderberries, which of course is not a good tree, it's more of a giant weed. And with a tree like that we might have contemplated attacking, but we had no reason to, so we quite have to leave it. Next, please. Having got rid of that offending tree that was in a rather unstable position, we found this underneath it. Now, again, if you remember that earlier pattern work where we just had the concrete surface, here's the diagonal diamond